My question to you is, could you point a little to the effect that abortions have on men? I know you talked about them taking the charge, but they're often left out of the equation when the act is being done. And there is an emotional, physical, and mental component to having your child murdered, frankly.
Yeah. That's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. I had a teammate, and I didn't know this until literally I started talking more about this issue. Yeah. And this guy was my teammate way back in 2004. We were drafted together to New England. And I recently spoke with him about a year ago. And he told me, man, when we were rookies, my girlfriend was pregnant back home. And we were about to go tell our parents on our next break. And he said, we went to practice. And when we came back, she told me that she had an abortion. And he told me about the struggle he's had to deal with. He's since married, he has kids, but there's never a replacement for kids. Even those of you who have either had abortions in this room or you have had miscarriages in this room. We've had 2 of them, 2 miscarriages. And there's never a real replacement for that, even if you have other kids. And he told me how he's dealt with that. And there is a really silent group of men who are impacted by abortion. But anytime there's life involved with anything, because our Creator breathed life into us. And so life is different. Like life is special. Life has impact. And when it's taken, whether you do it flippantly or whether you do it intentionally or whether it's accidental, there are always consequences. And there are a lot of men who are suffering. Yeah.
That's excellent.
But even within that, if I can say something else, I know men who have suffered, and because of the folks around them, they've been able to turn that into a tremendous mission. And that goes for all of us. I think the hope in all of this is that there is redemption, there's restoration, there's justice, there's purpose. There can be mission even in all the misery that we've been through. God can use that for his purposes. Yeah.
That's excellent. I think we have time for one more question. All the way in the back.
Hi, Kelly Adams. I work for the Heritage Foundation. I'm a huge fan, Mr. Watson, although I am a Steelers fan. It's really tough when you went to the Ravens.
It's okay. I respect the Steelers.
Okay. So you just talked about miscarriages and you talked about human dignity. Unfortunately, I had a miscarriage last summer at 12 weeks. It was a little boy, Down syndrome. And one of the things that was really difficult for me was when I went to the hospital, I had to have a procedure and they said, well, it's medical waste. And I fought like hell to try and find a Christian or Catholic organization that would bury my child. Yeah. And I was able to bury him. The human dignity part is incredible. I have a headstone and everything. But I just wonder, how does that conversation go into the human dignity side? Because I believe that if most people knew that if you have an abortion or you have a miscarriage or a stillbirth and you bury them, it is this act of human dignity of giving them a proper place of burial, that their life mattered. And I just would love to, I don't know if it's a question or just a comment, but something that I've thought about over the last year. And I think there's a real opportunity for conservatives to have a place in this, that human dignity does start at conception, and that we honor that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry for your loss and all that you're dealing with. I mentioned we had 2 miscarriages, and this was when we were living in Baltimore, right up the road. I was playing for the Ravens, and we had 2 kind of back-to-back within a year or so. And the first one was really difficult. It was around 13, 14 weeks, just like you. Hospital did about the same thing. DNC, got rid of the baby. Then it happened again. And one of the biggest things that we realized, it was a different hospital we went to. This one was a Catholic hospital. And there was an opportunity to have some sort of closure for parents and some sort of burial. And you saw this juxtaposition with how two different organizations treated life, but also the necessity that we have as human beings to have that closure and to honor the dignity. One thing that we don't do well, I think, as for those of you who are in church, but just in general as a society, we don't do death well. We talk about the human person in the womb being a person all the way up until birth. But whenever there's a miscarriage or something like that happens, we don't quite know what to say. Like, too many people are suffering in silence. And I don't know if this was your experience, but we realized that even through that, there were a bunch of other people around us that had the same issue, but nobody knew until we mentioned it, because everybody suffers in silence. One thing we can do as people of faith, as a pro-life movement, is to care for women and for men going through that, and offer those sorts of services. I think that is imperative that we do that, because it really is lacking, because we talk about it, but we don't really care for it in that way. Thanks for sharing that.